Okay,
Yeah,
so we are at podcast episode 36.
we're 36.
Yeah, 36, episode 36. Um, and then our topic is going to be talented assholes. Yeah, talented
Really,
geniuses. Why do they have to be such dicks?
why do we
Even
have to be
in
such dicks?
and also if they're in video game business as well, it doesn't have to necessarily be film and television. So yeah,
Yeah,
if we have heard,
basically insufferable geniuses.
yeah, exactly,
I
insufferable geniuses indeed. So yeah, if you have uh, like what you know from in terms of it could be rumor too, because like we don't know for sure if there actually are like that, unless you're like me that watched that Hayao Miyazaki um,
Tell us
documentary.
about Hayao Miyazaki, because I haven't learned much about him.
Well, there's a Netflix documentary about his retirement,
Hmm.
basically, and it's pretty funny because in that one you actually see him be kind of a jerk to his his I guess animators. He doesn't pull his punches. He just really like reams it. One of the things he was saying to one of the animators was like, if you're not gonna do it right, then why do this at all? Just leave. Like, just leave. Forget it. You don't put any thought into this, enough thought into this, then forget it. Like, what's the point? And yeah, he. That's just one small taste of him when he was doing his production. And there's another scene where this is during his retirement now, where he is talking to um, some people that are trying to like these programmers that are presenting this technology that can have an AI kind of learn how to animate so that it would be easier to get to where they need to get to, because animating in 3D is not easy. And Hayao Miyazaki is now just trying to do these little shorts for his museum work, for his own personal stuff. And the thing about it is that he's having people that are more experienced in making these animations. But the thing is that he is trying to get to a deadline and have his vision be realized, but he can't be doing the 3D animation. Um, so anyways, this is group of programmers. They're presenting it. They're showing this like weird, like uh, like it looks like a stock model out of like Resident Evil franchise or something. It's like a zombie vampire looking thing, but it's showing this 3D figure that is run by their program that is learning how to walk. And the thing about it learning how to walk is that it's like using its head, its shoulders is like really moving in such a weird way. And like pretty much when he sees that, he explains that about his relationship with a person that has like a degenerative like disease or something like that, something neurological that makes it painful for them to even raise their hand and stuff like that. And he compares what he saw to that, saying that like what I'm seeing here is like an insult to life. And when he says shit
Jesus
like that,
Christ.
it's fucking cringe because you see like the life being sucked out of the programmer's um, soul being just gone after hearing shit like that in front of his entire studio. By the way, it wasn't just him and the three programmers. It's him, the three programmers, the fucking producer or director of the studio. I would say is his producer, but and his entire animation team that's working on the 3D animation. Uh, there to witness his like just sandbagging them in front of him. Um, and three of the programmers are just like they're one could barely like utter anything. The other one is just silently just staring off into space and just super quiet. And then the third one is really having a hard time trying to explain to him like what was the purpose to this. And when he does explain, he says, um, it's to make a programmer learn how to animate. And then like yeah, pretty much his perception clearly was like poorly the perception of 3D obviously probably looks like bad, um, just by looking at what they were trying to do and nothing. And they're programmers. They don't know how to visually present something in a way where it makes sense to them. It makes sense in their mind because they're programmers. But yeah, you could tell like fuck like it was just what an
just to have like
a-hole.
this legendary director tell you
Yeah.
your work is an affront upon mankind.
Yeah, it's just whoa.
Probably
Oh man.
probably demoralizing.
Yeah, yeah. No kidding. Ugh, Jesus. That was hard to watch. But yeah, and he and it doesn't end there too, because they start talking about his personal life, or well, actually they didn't. Never mind. The documentary doesn't go about his personal life, but you, based on what you watch, though, you're like, where's his family? Where's his wife? Where's his kids? And we're like looking it up too, me and Brenda, and we found out that uh, we don't even know if he divorced or something like that, or if she's even alive. But we know that he did have two sons, and apparently one of them is estranged. That because ever since like he had like I guess he had him when he was like his career as a director and animator like skyrocketed to to a point where they're like making all these feature films. And because of all that and his devotion, which is a very typical Japanese problem here, with work ethic, is that he pretty much never saw his son, like his second son. And then the older son was like trying so hard in his own like career to not get into animation and to not get into movies or just anywhere close to what his father does, which is funny because like he ends up becoming a director anyways. Um, but yeah, apparently he just doesn't know his own son, like or especially the youngest one. Um, and that's like how that story is for this guy. It's interesting.
But there's always been that um, common thread between people that are considered geniuses among their craft, right? Like where they have like a poor relationship with other people. Like they have really very anti-social.
Sometimes,
Yeah,
yes.
Mm,
yeah. Sometimes it's
not all of them, yeah.
yeah. Um, and I kind of wonder just how much of that is also uh, just perpetuated by just that notion, where like
Yeah.
you think of yourself, geniuses have to are typically uh, assholes to other people. So I'm a genius. I have the liberty to just be that way.
Mm.
I think
And
it depends. Like I think it depends on the sense of like a cult, like a multitude of reasoning for like culture and just like maybe their thing. I know I understand like when it comes to anybody's like personal endeavors, like you do have to make some level of sacrifice. And it just depends on like how far are you willing to take it, and what that level is for you, and maybe even your personal goals or something like that. But it's like it also depends too, kind of like if the person is an a-hole because like they're really like I have no time to kind of like mince my words here, that like to like make it
yeah, I mean,
more
there's the
palatable.
notion that
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. There's the notion that that really smart people are typically assholes. But just because you're an asshole doesn't mean you're smart.
that's true. Yeah,
You know, yeah,
it's
just
the
like
it's
just
like
like
that thing where it's like where people think they know that they're right.
yeah, exactly. There's actually like the exact opposite where you think you're actually incompetent at your job, and you think you're just so much better, and you have like this cognitive bias where you think that you don't understand just how stupid you are at what you're doing.
Mm-mm-mm.
I know it
supervisor
sounds
syndrome.
yeah. What's that?
Supervisor syndrome, where your job is
Supervisor.
pretty much redundant, and the only way you can feel useful is by barking orders.
Right.
Which sounds like I'm talking about our previous president, but I was not going political until right now.
You said it.
Yeah.
You said it just now. Oh, boo boo.
Although, but sometimes it's just the matter of being like such a perfectionist that you just don't have the patience um
Right.
to wait for yeah, to excuse that kind of mistake.
Right.
There was Alfred Hitchcock who famously said that. By the way, he corrected the quote. People were saying that he was saying that the actors were cattle. He's like, no, I never said that actors are cattle. I said they should be treated like cattle.
Wow.
He was
He's
a
like
real
made
asshole.
it made it worse. Made it sound even worse.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on the farm, really. Some cattle are treated luxurious.
Oh my goodness. That's funny. It's crazy. And I think also in the documentary too, he was like explaining how, I don't know if he was sounding like he's a little bit remorseful that during productions, like he was saying that during my time, making movies and stuff like that, and these animators, it's like I feel almost as if I'm devouring their skill, like I'm using it up and I'm just spitting it out. Like he almost sounds like there is that kind of feeling of like there was no other way to like get it across without having to kind of just deconstruct and rip them apart and then like reuse them for whatever he was trying to envision in his work.
Sounds like a serial killer.
Yeah.
It's a healthy way of looking at things.
Yeah, it's pretty weird. Aside from that too, I mean, he also says things like he always feels like he needs to always do his best, like always one up himself, or like
Sure.
one movie needed to be better than the next, and then even in retirement, he's all like, "I'm still not done. I'm not stopping. What my passion is. And that's what this whole like documentary was following, was his path of trying to experiment with 3D and trying to do his own like version of 3D, I guess you'd say, like his own little short story that isn't like a full featured thing.
Yeah, I mean that man is never going to retire. How many times has he announced that he's going to retire? That he comes back one more time?
I think it was like officially it was twice, and then other times it was just like these rumors or whatever that people were, based on what he was talking about. But like officially on
just
paper,
kind of
he retired twice, something like that.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean when you're following a passion for so long, like I imagine that you find yourself at some point thinking, well, what else do I do?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's also like because you see it with a lot of creative people and lots of things, whether it's art or like even sports, like someone like Michael Jordan, or music like someone like Jay-Z, or even Tarantino, who is like like I'm gonna make 10 movies and then I'm done, because like he was noting that like typically as the directors get older, they get worse at their craft and their movies get worse. And so he only wants to do that. But I think part of it is like what you said, Carlos. But part of it, I think, is like, let's say someone like Tarantino. He's watching movies. He watches them a lot. He watches TV. He does a lot of other stuff. And I think for him, the reason why I don't see him, or I see him like retiring and then coming back and retiring and coming back and trying other stuff like again and again, is because you're also watching other stuff and being like, you're getting more ideas, right? It's not like you retire and you stop being creative. It's like you retire and
true.
maybe you want to do other stuff, and maybe you can, but you're also looking at things going like, I feel like I could have done that better. Not even in like an asshole, arrogant way, but it's just like I feel like I could maybe take what that person did, and maybe it would have been better if you had done this and this and this and this, and then that leads you down another avenue, and then you all of a sudden you have a whole script that you've written. You have a whole movie that's in your head, and it's just like, well, now I feel like I have to make it, and it's just like it's that too. Your mind never stops, so it's tricky, especially in like looking at that area of retirement where it's just like same thing happened with Jay-Z, like where he's like, he's considered one of the greatest rappers of all time and all this. He's got an awesome cadence and stuff, and it's exactly what you were saying with Miyazaki, Carlos, where you're like, how many times can this dude retire and then just come back? And it's Jay-Z's retired so many times and people, they don't just like, okay, like you're going to come back. Like, we know you are. It's fine. Like, in the same thing with Michael Jordan back in the day where it's like he retired his number and then some other dude took it and he's like, and I'm going to come back and give me back my number jersey as well. And then he's like, wait, what do you mean? It's like, I'm 23. I'm number 23. Like, that's it. Like, and, he tried other stuff like baseball and golf, and he just inevitably kept coming back to basketball. And I think he was like actively getting worse every time he came back, where he was like getting traded to like the Raptors and all these like shitty teams that no one knew, and like the Wizards, and like he was like not very good anymore, and he kind of just fizzled out. I don't know if he still plays or not, but I know for like at least a decade after like the last time he retired, he was like sort of just, he was there, but like he was never like making the charts of like, oh yeah, Michael Jordan, he's still the top. It's like, yeah, I think Michael Jordan still plays. I don't know. I have heard. I don't remember. Like he's kind of. I think he's there. I see him every once in a while. But I
mean, especially for an athlete, when they're masters of their craft, like it's no longer their
the physicality.
The age really betrays exactly. Yeah. Your reflex gets lower. Your joints no longer get there. Yeah. I mean, how many normal people just suffer back problems from just being human, let alone somebody who's subjecting their bodies to like extremes for such a long extended periods of time.
And that's the thing about like with the physicality, something that's so physical like that, where it's like, again, that perfectionism and that doesn't go away. Like you might get older, but you'll be like, and these younger guys are better than me, but I can't let that stand. Like I gotta do better. I gotta keep pushing myself. Like I want to watch this documentary on Netflix called The Last Dance. I've heard about it for like a lot. It's about like Michael Jordan and like the Chicago Bulls during their prime, and like how, I'm not going to talk about it too much because I don't really know that much about it, but like I know that like it focuses on how like Michael Jordan was like, he's a great athlete, but it's exactly what we were talking about, where he's like, he was clearly not the best human being to his teammates because he was just like, we got to be better. We got to be better. And they were better. They were the best, and they were winning championship rings every single year. And it was just like, they're unstoppable. Like they were just this fucking force. And it was just like, but like
they were an international phenomenon.
Oh yeah. But obviously it came at a cost. And I would say, just like on a small little tangent, a good movie to sort of illustrate all the stuff that we're talking about in terms of like perfectionism and like, is it worth it? And you got to sacrifice stuff, is this movie called Whiplash. I don't know if you guys have seen it.
Say that. Yeah, I love that movie. It's so good.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome. But it's about this kid who goes to this school for like gifted musicians, and he's really good. And like J.K. Simmons, his instructor, is like this complete asshole instructor, but who like everybody just kind of puts up with, but they put up with him because he does produce these geniuses. Like he produces these like world-renowned musicians who were like go on to fame and fortune, and they're the best of the best of the best, but he just pushes him like to the brink. And the movie's basically about this kid who's like, he gives up, like he thinks he is arrogant, like he thinks he's better than other people, and like he like gives up his like hot girlfriend and all this stuff, like who's really great and like all this stuff, and he's just like, I can't be with you because like you would eventually just hold me down, and you would eventually come to resent me, and it would just be. And she's like, how can you possibly like know? You can't tell the future, you can't know this. And he's like, I want to be the best, and you can't hold me down. And it's basically, the whole movie is basically about like, it doesn't necessarily, you don't necessarily have to sacrifice everything to be the best. And there are different paths that you can take, and everybody's different. But with this kid, it's sort of like, okay, he's going, he's getting into car crashes, he's doing like all this ridiculous shit to be the best, and like, is it worth it? And it's basically comes down to like, I mean, it's in the eye of the beholder. Like, is it worth it to you to sacrifice all this? I mean, it depends. It depends on you. And yeah, it's really, really good movie. Pretty old now, but yeah, it's a good movie.
J.K. Simmons is like the perfect asshole, by the way.
Oh yeah.
I'm just gonna to illustrate just how much of an asshole he is. I'm just gonna spoil a tiny little bit of
in the movie. In real life, he's actually really, really nice.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But he played. I mean, we saw it. Obviously, small glimpses of that with like J. Jonah Jameson and stuff, and we really see it full force in Whiplash. Yeah.
There's this part where he has the whole band playing. He stops everyone and is like, "Okay, I'm gonna stop you. There is one of you who is out of tune. I want the person to leave immediately." So one kid, gets up crying, runs out. He's like, "Oh, it wasn't him. But, oh well, if you couldn't tell the difference, good riddance."
Yeah, he doesn't deserve to be here anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You couldn't understand that? All right, then.
Like, he's insane. He's like throwing the drum kit at the kid and shit. He's just like, what the? This is fucking crazy, dude.
Damn.
But the ending of the movie is really pretty amazing. Like, that last scene is just insane.
Yeah.
Like the whole drumming thing, and like they're like in sync completely, and the kid just like keeps going, even though J.K. Simmons is like, all right, stop, like you need to like leave, like I'm done with you, and the kid just doesn't stop, and he's just like, it's a really intense, awesome scene.
Yeah, it's one of those few movies where like there's one scene where you can just close your eyes because the music is so good.
Yeah.
Soul being the other one that I can think of. And if you haven't seen that movie, oh my god, please watch it.
Soul was good, yeah.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that. That got me in the feels, as per usual, Pixar films.
Yeah. Just to go off on a tangent right there. Yeah, that movie it's so excellent. It's Pixar at its peak.
Yeah, it has like an even more relatable story to me, just anybody, whatever you're doing in your life. It just has a very good message that like kind of hits at a good home that makes you just kind of happy for the simplest things. So it's good. It's good. Pretty good.
And it's funny, we've seen so many like so much of the of the both movies and and TV culture, like there's so many assholes that we that show up in the media, right? Like we have Rick and Morty, for example. We have House, who's his main gig is that he's a jerk, but he's always right.
Right.
I think it's also the lack of ability to. This is more of what the phrase is, not that it describes the people they deal with, but one doesn't want to suffer fools. And what I mean by that is that sometimes there's people who are looking at your craft from the outside looking in, or some people who are working in the same field who just may be lacking some things in terms of training, or maybe they could be missing some key points of training that you thought were standard. And then, like, if they make a mistake, it's like it's not just an honest mistake to look over. It's more like you idiot, you fucked up. What do you think you're doing? Like that kind of,
Mm.
that would be the reaction in their mind rather than like, you know, kind of just taken back on like, oh, did you really not know that X, Y, and Z connect to that way? It's like, here, let me show you. Like there's always a different way, but somehow it has to be the nuclear option. Just go like, learn, it's like, get it right next time, stupid, rather than like, oh, hold on, come on, let me show you something. Like,
Right.
I think there are different ways genius can work with others, even if they don't have the same level of training as them or the same level of discipline as them, where they can kind of share what they know rather so they can learn how to pass the torch rather than, just kind of preach and punish at the same time. Like, I can't really think of any good examples in this. I just know like let's take Nintendo for example. Miyamoto isn't necessarily the greatest person to work with. So from what I hear, like he can be kind of uncompromising. Like they say he's kind of softened up on that over the years, but his position is clear. He has to pass on what he knows to future generations because one day he might retire.
Yeah.
So it makes sense for people like Koizumi or Motokura who work in Mario games where they might be taking on the torch after Miyamoto leaves, or Aonuma for Zelda, and whatever kind of talent that he trains when he retires. It's creators aren't immortal. We might hold their works as godlike, but eventually they're going to have to pass a torch, or they may leave us prematurely, which is an unfortunate fact of life. And it's less of, getting mad at newer talent. You have to be more understanding because they might be filling in your shoes someday, and it might be on your terms or it might not be, but you want to leave a better impression so they can kind of understand like how you work or how to see things with your eyes before you're no longer there. And I think that when it comes to some genius, they think that people are either beneath them or that people should either get them or they should go.
Yeah.
Yeah, like so there's
That's
definitely
hard.
the culture. There's definitely the culture of like, oh, I had it so hard growing up. You have to have it just as hard.
Oh yeah, there's
It's no
that.
worse.
Hell, it's not even just that. Sometimes there's like artists on the internet, for example, whether you're in the commission game or if you're like going pro with animators or like comic artists or think tanks like the Street Fighter art group or Udon or anything like that.
Right.
You could be working in that field and oh my God, when you're interacting with people on social media, yes, it's treading on thin ice, but watch just build up that emotional intelligence so you don't react to stuff. I'm not going to say who this one person is, but he worked with Udon and he works on this one game that has been delayed on Kickstarter. He recently had a meltdown with some users. I don't know why, but the way he was handling it wasn't necessarily all that great. And he was going block crazy with some users just for like asking questions or just going like, hey, what happened with your Patreon or anything like that. Like this guy is not untalented by any means, but it's just sometimes it's where the geniuses come from that can have an effect on their behavior. And they might think that they paid their dues and that they don't deserve this crap anymore. And somebody just like gives them a hard time and then they just go off the handle. And I'm not saying that's what happened with this person. I'm just throwing out like an example of saying like, someone of a similar background would probably be dealing with some trolls on the internet, playing the race, pushing the race buttons and everything and just like getting under their skin. And then they start going into this moment where they're like going from, hey, I was the genius suffering under this crap to, hey, I'm the genius, you're the idiot, I earned what I earned, you don't understand what it was like, you don't understand the walls I climbed up to get to this position. It's like, okay, I understand where you might be the victim here, but you got to understand some of the people online, they don't even care about that stuff. And none of the stuff you're saying to them to try to make them understand isn't going to get through to them. Anything, they might take that information and use it against you, even as a joke. So you got to watch carefully when you're dealing with people who for one, they don't care where you're coming from, but on the other hand, it's like, just because you worked on all this stuff doesn't necessarily mean that people should automatically get on all fours and kiss your ass. Sorry, that's not how it works.
All right.
You put yourself on a public forum, everybody's at the same eye level, even if you don't feel like that's what you've earned. But if you made a mistake, people are going to riot on you for your mistakes. That's something that you have to get over with, because it's like, people aren't going to care about your history to overlook some of the mistakes that you're making as a person now. And yeah, I mean, I'm just bringing up that one person as an example. And there's another, there's plenty of people who get into this kind of stuff where they can't separate their personal life from their present mistakes, going like, look, sometimes even the greatest make mistakes and they have flaws, but you can't deflect them, and you can't like try to dodge them and act like they weren't there. Try to keep your successes and your screw ups separate. Like, try to own up to your screw ups if you can, or at least try to build up that. Like, you can't worship yourself as a god and not expect, people to still people are still going to see you as human. And no matter how good you are, no matter how good your skills are, your mistakes are still mistakes. They do not become lesser mistakes just because you're in a better position than the people who are criticizing you.
You're talking about they're letting the ego take over of their reputation.
Yeah,
so
there
basically,
it is.
Like they have all this built-up background, this built-up background of what who they think they are and what they've climbed up to. I think it's at the end, like I think anybody falls in that trap too. It's when you're just not aware of your own biases and you cave into it and you just like let it take over, and you get insulted when people don't realize it. And it's like the thing of it's the ego thing, the negative side of ego. Yeah, by the way, ego is something that everybody should have to kind of, it's a defense mechanism to keep yourself moving forward. So a lot of people will use ego as a negative thing, but it's something
you have an
yourself.
ego. That's bad. It's like, no, it's just,
it's
kind of like having a big dog. If you don't have it on a leash, don't get. It's your fault.
Right, exactly.
It's pretty much your fault if anything goes wrong.
Right. I think, there's a lot of ego that has to do with like those creative assholes out there, or those not creative assholes, successful assholes. I don't know. I forgot how we were putting it. But we were talking about, maybe not assholes necessarily, but they can be, or they're just hard to work with. And there's that respect level that people have for them.
Yeah.
But I think we were talking about Dan Harmon was somebody that supposedly is hard to work with, apparently.
Yeah. I was just thinking of that he definitely, I've heard interviews with people talk about not only his drinking problems, but also just the way he talks to his crew, and he's just really hard to work with too.
Right.
In a way, I always feel that Rick, it's like his impression of himself at its worst. I've heard that he's gotten better over the years. Like, he's definitely done a lot of introspection, but Rick is exactly that kind of person. Somebody with drinking problems, who's just who thinks himself so smart that he's infallible and that he's still better than everybody else. He has no emotional intelligence whatsoever. He thinks that he's justified not to have that emotional intelligence nor work on it.
Right. It's kind of funny that the art is reflecting the
Midas touch.
Yeah. What's that?
He thinks he's got the Midas touch. Everything he touches turns to gold, and those who don't understand his creative choices, or anyone who raises a protest, Yeah, I mean, I always feel like Rick and Morty had this kind of hill where it started going down. Uh, some say it was past season one. I say it was. I want to say season three was when the hill started to show up because I actually did like season two. Um, season three had its ups and downs, but it was mostly down the rest of the way, and I kind of feel like Royland should be in the driver's seat for most things because Rick and Morty is just funny when it's nonsense. It really doesn't need to insist upon itself so much, and that's why I enjoy Solar Opposites. Because yes, there's that subplot with the wall. I think that's still pretty damn clever, and it still does like the domestic comedy stuff. So it could stand on its own two legs while still being kind of silly because that's where the Royland flavor comes from, being kind of silly. So you have stuff like Mr. Poopy Butthole or Pickle Rick, which, I get it. The joke was pretty stupid, but, it was
very
still
stupid, but it was funny. Like it was a funny
it was
episode.
funny because it was stupid.
Yeah.
Like I saw the Pickle Rick episode like after everybody had talked about it. Like I didn't know exactly what it was, but everybody was saying, "Oh, Pickle Rick," and I'm like, "Oh man, this must be like some clever Dan Harmon joke." And I watched it, and I'm like,
It's really just a meme.
the stupidest fucking joke I've seen, but the fucking episode is really funny because it's just exactly what you're saying,
Having
D'Angelo.
the
It's just
machete
nonsense.
kind of appearance
It's just
in there,
total
too.
nonsense, and him like fucking taking control of the rats and all this shit in the sewers, and like it's really it is just like this really comedic scenario coming out of this really fucking dumb joke.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like I wouldn't like. I enjoy every season of Rick and Morty. I like them all. I always get a laugh out of them. But like, I do think that like the quality kind of lessens over the seasons. I think that the first season is still probably the best in terms of comedy, in terms of not necessarily hammering the jokes too far into the ground.
Right.
And I think that shows up more and more as we go along with the show. But I still enjoy it. But yeah, it's definitely it. I think it is I do think it's overrated. Like I think that like especially now, like I think like after season 3 when people really started discovering it and it really became more mainstream, or not mainstream, but really more just like everybody's watching it and they got this Szechuan sauce at McDonald's and everybody knows about it and all this fucking bullshit. Like it just like kind of, I don't know. It kind of lost something for me a little bit.
Yeah, like things don't feel as sporadic anymore. And season 4 kind of felt very Harmon heavy, where there were just more stories, but they were like stories where it's like, it's not exactly what you expect, and here's why. And that was mostly every season 4 episode. And the part that really got me wasn't it wasn't the one with the face huggers. It wasn't the one with the gods. It was like trying to remember which one I really didn't like. It was the Vat of Acid episode. The Vat of Acid episode really pissed me off because it was just Morty making like trans-dimensional save states or quick save in real life. And then they were like, oh yeah, this is why this is a bad idea and you shouldn't do it. It's like, okay, but the rest of it, you were just paying lip service to a lot of stuff. You were just huffing your own farts from the bag, Dan, and I could really see that around the climax. It's like, look, if you want to turn these things on their head, that's fine, but understand that sometimes people want to enjoy things for the ride, and I'm not saying like make it completely consequence free. Just don't over escalate it to the point where it's just that absurd, because that just really gets me. Like, make it believable enough. Like, I can understand when shit hits like the love potion episode with where they started changing everyone into Cronenbergs. That actually was fine for like a shit hits the fan moment. Acid in a vat one, that was just like, oh well, guess what? There's the vat of acid. You didn't like the idea, go back into the vat of acid. It's like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
But you just made this whole thing where it's like, you're wrong, Morty. You made the wrong adventure, and then I gotta save you from the angry mom. Like, okay, I see where this is. And I don't know. That left a really bad taste in my mouth. That episode, yeah, there it is.
I would say like the season 4 episode that like really just cracked me up for better or worse, like was a similar sort of it's not quite as it wasn't nearly as absurd as like the Pickle Rick episode, but it's just one of those episodes where it just sort of it harps on one joke, but it doesn't necessarily like the joke's still funny at the end of the episode as it was at the beginning, which is the heist episode where they're like fucking
you son of a bitch, I'm in.
Yeah, that's the whole,
you
that's
son
the
of a
whole,
bitch,
that's
I'm
the
in.
entire episode is it revolves around that one line and like parodying the way that heist movies do that. And I was just like, oh, let's just bring back this dude who's like retired and he's like working on a shitty job. Like he's like, I got this heist. You ready?
That
like,
was actually
son of a bitch, I'm in. And like this, that whole fucking episode is just that, like from beginning to end. And I just really enjoyed it because it was so stupid. Like, but it worked, you know. There's a balance, you know, for sure. That like it's not easy to strike, but like, you know, and that's kind of my point is like I feel like they had that balance of sort of comedy with emotional whatever, but also with like, you know, just
like
not
absurdist,
not
meta humor.
Well, not milking it until you hate the joke, like what Family Guy has become or something, where it's like a shadow of its former self, and it's almost parodying itself. And it's not like it's not really, it can't really come up with a lot of original ideas. Whereas with Rick and Morty, I feel it's like, I feel like they strike that balance really well in the first season, and then it's just sort of, it's kind of hit and miss now, where it's like sometimes the episodes work, sometimes they really don't work.
Sometimes they're the train episode where everything is like a meta commentary on the storytelling.
Yeah,
and like, you know, the very last joke, which is that kind of made me chuckle, but you know, I knew that at some point it was gonna hit some sort of absurdity when they get underneath and start playing to Jesus Christ.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
It's just really funny to think about it. But it's like so out there that I'm like, okay, you're kind of losing me over here.
Right.
Train.
I know that.
That's
I know that like a story train.
So, I don't know. They can do fine when it's anthology episodes.
Yeah. But you know, at the same time, it is based on, obviously, you know, this goes without saying, but it's based on personal preference as well. Like we were talking, I think we were talking about this off air. I don't remember. Maybe we talked about it the last episode, but we were talking about Barry because Sean, you had watched it recently.
Oh yeah.
And like we were talking about that episode with like the feral kid and like her taekwondo dad who like Barry has to assassinate. And I wanted to bring that episode up because that's an episode where I watched the behind the scenes stuff of that, and it's really funny to see like Bill Hader and like the other writer of the series like talk about how that episode could have gone either really bad or really great depending on who's watching it. Like because it is extremely different than any other show in any other episode. And there's, I mean, aside from like the last scene when like the detective gets his head snapped by like the dude's kick, like aside from that, then the detective had been like blackmailing Barry, right? And like aside from that, there are no real consequences in that episode. It's very much like a standalone episode that's very weird and out there. And it's just like Bill Hader was basically saying like, people are either going to like, who've been watching the show are either going to be like, wow, that was really weird and different, but I enjoyed it. Or they're going to be like, what the fuck was this? I don't want to watch the show anymore.
Right.
Like, you know, it's going to be like one or the other. And it is like, it is sort of the same. It's a similar thing where it's like, your show is going to have a certain tone. It's going to have a certain maybe
Right.
arc or whatever. But you can still, there's still a place for episodes that are totally out there like that. But it is a balancing act, right? You're holding
Yeah.
a million different plates up at once, and it's very easy for all those plates to fall and shatter, which is what happens with a lot of shows. But Barry is one of those shows where it I feel like they have that balance down pretty well.
I think that you know, like, what was that dude's name? The bald dude, the Russian bald dude.
Oh,
Wait, I
the
think you-
fucking the dude with no eyebrows who's like,
Yeah.
that dude's so hilarious.
Yeah,
man.
he
cracks me up.
He cracks
so-
me up so much too. Yeah, he makes
He
me.
cracks Bill Hader up too, because like they were talking about like the behind the scenes, and like there's that one scene where he's like where they're out in the desert and like Barry is like helping train the like new dudes.
Yeah.
And like if you notice like in the scene, like every time the dude says something, Bill Hader is looking away because he's laughing. Like,
Yeah,
he can't
help
fucking
it.
stop laughing.
That guy, yeah. Yeah, that guy does such a good job as his character, because, like,
Yeah.
I swear, like, he had to have taken notes from fucking The Room. He's, like, sounds like
Oh,
exactly
yeah.
like Tommy Wiseau,
So,
you know?
yeah.
He's so fucking weird. He
Yeah.
talks about such stupid things. It doesn't... I'm so sad too, because like the whole, like, you know, there was this finally at some point his group of people weren't taking him seriously, and I thought it was just gonna be one of those things where he's just gonna be tagging along and, you know, fucking care about what he's doing, but they're constantly being successful as being a gang or something like that. It's just too bad that didn't pan out that way. Oh man, that character cracks me up so damn much. Every time I see him, I tell Brenda, I'm like, I can't stop laughing when he talks.
He's one of those characters where like every time before he even says anything, I'm just like, I can't wait to see where this goes.
I know,
because he knows it's gonna be hilarious.
It's so
every
fucking
time.
bizarre, dude. It's so great to see him in this role, because he's such, like, this shows that he's such an underrated actor. You know, like he always gets these like roles where he's like a fucking badass serial killer type or something, and
Right.
and you know, he's that same actor was also in was it Gotham as the only villain that's a killer. What's his name? Zaz. He plays as Zaz. Yeah. And
Anthony Kerrigan is his name.
okay,
Yeah.
Anthony Kerrigan. Nice. Yeah, that man, love that actor, man. Yeah, just I gotta see him in other stuff. Like, I gotta see something different too, because like he really brought that role to life. It wouldn't be the same.
Oh yeah.
It's so funny. Cracks me up all the time.
I just want to know if I just want to know if his character and Barry will ever end up together. It just plays this attitude where, like, does he have a crush on him or not?
Yeah.
Right.
I'm pretty
He's
sure
just
he
like-
does. I'm pretty sure he does. Like, I'm definitely, yeah, that's definitely the case. But, you know, it's going to be one of those things where I feel like it's like one of those characters that has, you know, unlimited love for them, but they just know they never can have them, because, like,
Yeah,
and then he'll, like,
Sure.
it comes with also, like, a
the
near
Chechens. They're not
unlimited-
Russians. They're Chechens.
Oh, right. Yeah, Chechens.
right.
Yes, that's
Yeah,
true. But like he'll have like unlimited loyalty to him, I feel like, to some degree. Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe he'll break later, but like I don't know. I feel at this point like he's just he's just gonna make it worse for Barry though. That's what I really think it's gonna be. He's just the catalyst that will just cause things to be worse and worse. Maybe one day he'll come into play where like he actually helps Barry out.
Right.
Yeah, I can see that.
I could
It's-
definitely
it's
see it.
just-
Yeah.
His character just feels so out of place with this like hardened, Eastern European mafia. And he's just like so concerned with the marketing and the fashion and maybe bringing
everything
some
else that
margaritas
has
and stuff.
nothing to do with it. Yeah, I think my favorite was that the whole beginning of the second season. That was hilarious.
Oh.
Where he's explaining
What happened? I don't remember what happened.
Well, he joins the Latin, like, was it?
Right,
Oh,
he's trying
right,
to
the
be friends with
Bolivian
the other
mob.
dude.
Yeah,
Like, he really
yeah.
wants to be
And
friends with the other head of
and
the
it's
gang.
very obvious that uh he has this like relation, like this crush, like they have a crush for each other or something, and they just don't
Yeah, you're
admit it.
right.
It's so ridiculous. The way he decorates everything too. It's just and he talks as if that like they're just some legitimate business that's just getting along and
Right.
everything's working out so great. Oh my god. It's so ridiculous. It's so funny though. I think Barry has this funny situation of like, man, all of these people are idiots, you know? And Barry's the only one that isn't the idiot that's trying to get out of these of these terrible people. It's really
Yeah,
that
it
was
is
so funny.
yeah. I mean that show has a lot of layers too, where it's like there's some
Yeah.
sad stuff in terms of his past and stuff, and like how he's sort of roped into this like being a hitman by like his father's like friend who's like this scumbag, but like he's like he's the only person that like Barry has, and then you have like Henry Winkler's character who I love, who's like the acting teacher, and like all the layers there.
It's like a hard 10.
I love Henry Winkler, man. He's so good. Like
Yeah.
he can do comedy so well, and he really plays that role really well. But then you also have the whole thing with like
I love
Barry
that-
killed his girlfriend, who was like who was the detective, and
Right. And that comes up with season 2. So if nobody saw it, season 1
comes up hard at the end of season 2.
that was really out of nowhere, you know. I actually honestly thought this was a dream sequence because I was like, man, this is too good to be true, you know?
Right.
Like there's this time gap where, you know, Barry's like everything's turning out so well. And then it turned out not to be. I was like, oh god. Oh, man.
You know, and those kind of like, you know, left turns that you just don't expect but that are good.
Yeah.
Like I feel like the show really lives up to its kind of like, you know, what's that called? Like the it's underwritten, you know, premise of like, you know, the show is also an examination of acting itself, where you have to give you all you know, the act of acting is not pretending that you're doing things. It's like it's feeling it. It's actually, you know, living through it. And if you have to make, and one of my favorite things is that if you had to make a choice when acting between the safe thing to do and the you know, unexpected, you know, different thing to do, the bold thing to do, always choose the bold, you know, action.
Right.
Yeah. No matter where it takes you. And that's saying it always lives up to that premise. Like, for example, killing that guy's girlfriend.
Yeah. It's so wild. Yeah. It's kind of hard to imagine what season 3 is going to be like.
Yeah.
'Cause,
I know, especially after the whole rampage at the end.
Oh, yeah. Right. And then it seems like they were getting introduction to another mob member. So there's that. And then, but yeah. But does anybody else have any like talented assholes examples?
I mean, I have a couple, but I don't know how much there is to necessarily say about them. I mean, we talked about Dan Harmon and Community a bit, and he's had other stuff with like Sarah Silverman show and, you know, a lot of shit like that. But Chevy Chase is a renowned one because we were talking about Community as well. And, you know, he's renowned. He's been like that for decades, where like even like back on like shit like Caddyshack and Vacation, where people just have like, he seems like such a fucking asshole human being to the core, where he just like is so insanely hard to work with. But like he's good at what he does, clearly, but that's why people like hire him. But I can't I mean, it's like that old Family Guy joke where like Brian is like on The Bachelor or whatever, and he's like, yeah, I mean, in terms of Chevy Chase, the guy's pretty much got to have like no money left, and like I'm pretty sure that's true, and I'm pretty sure that he'll never be hired again after Community, because he's just like it. Like the word has just it's too far spread. He's burned too many bridges at this point, and like if you look at some of the behind the scenes stuff or like some of the bloopers of like of Community, like you just see how like you're seeing these actors like at the end of their day, and they're still being nice to each other. They still love each other and stuff.
Right.
And Chevy Chase is the one dude who's just a complete dick. Like every time, everybody's just like, okay, Chevy, like we fucking get it. Can we just do the next take? Let's just do the next take. And he's just like harping on this one thing or saying like racial slurs or like all this shit. And it's just like, dude, what the?
He's like, wait, is the film going or is this not the? Wait, is this the scene?
Like,
he's too much his character.
Do you want to be fired or what?
Some character.
Yeah,
it's like they purposely wrote him in saying, I'm just gonna do what I think you would do.
I mean, I feel like that's totally the case where they just wrote him as
him,
slightly exaggerated version of himself, and he doesn't realize that it's him. So he's just
and maybe that's the joke. Like he just, like they don't even know if he really does get it or not.
I mean, that was actually one of his main complaints about, exiting the show, other than the pretty terrible hours that they admittedly had. Like, the whole cast kept saying that they had pretty strong, hard hours, even for a TV show, because, the oldest people have worked in shows before this.
Right.
Like, one of his main complaints was that his character was just, plain becoming a racist. And it's that kind of thing where, like, he just either didn't get the fact that his character was supposed to be this out of touch, person who has those kind of, mild, racist tendencies. And I'm sure that he was just taking it personal.
Sure.
that he feels like, man, this feels a little too close to home.
Yeah, it's hitting a little too close.
Man. Oh, damn. Man, there's some soul searching there if it's starting to getting close.
And mind you, I like a lot of the episodes where I like the one episode where he actually bonds with Joel McHale's character. What was where they're like, go and get go to the barber and get a shave, and they actually start getting along.
Yeah. Right. But
also,
but is that happening in real life, like in the character?
That only I know. Maybe he didn't
who
know.
Knows? Whatever.
I can't imagine.
Yeah, I know, right? You like eventually you get too into your character and too into your yourself that you just can't imagine just like looking outside and just admitting you've been doing some terrible things.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of somebody else like that, I would say I was gonna mention Bill Murray, but I don't really. I know that he's like been, he's sort of the same way where he's been hard to work with for a lot of times. Like there's that sort of notorious thing about him and Harold Ramis and like falling out over like how Groundhog Day was being made and stuff like that. But I don't know that much like in terms of that, so I'm not gonna really speak to it that much. But I will say just on a brief note, in terms of someone else, it's definitely James Cameron, who is like who's sort of in Hollywood just infamously known as like this dude who's insanely talented. Obviously, he's made some of the best movies ever made, like Terminator, Terminator 2, Aliens, True Lies, etc. Not actually that many movies. He's made like 8 movies, I think, total. But like there's some of the best movies ever made, and like, but he's
some of the most profitable for sure.
And profitable, yeah. But it's I like he's been married many times. Like there's this story that I heard, and I can't remember exactly what he said, but he was married to Linda Hamilton while they were filming Terminator 2. And like I think it was the scene where they're at the mental hospital and Sarah Connor is like running and she gets the elevator and she sees the T-800 come out and she's like, oh shit, and like he's actually protecting her. But like I think during that scene, like there was something like. And like she was like talking to Cameron, and he was like, "Do it this way, do it this way." And it was like after many takes, and she's like I've done it this way. I'm trying to get it right as well. Like you don't have to be such an asshole. Like it's not like you're the best director in the world or something. And he's like, "No, I am." Oh. And he's just totally dead serious. And then he's just like, "Okay, do the take again. Do the take again." And it's just like. He said a lot of that stuff before, and I've heard other actors say where it's just like, man, he actually does think he's God. Like he legit thinks he is like put on this earth to be the best, and that he is like he's just there's not a flaw. Like he doesn't have a flaw. And yeah, I've heard that a lot, and I've heard that from I've heard like that interview with Linda Hamilton and like some of the other people he's worked with, and yeah, I can't really speak to his character more than that, but he definitely comes off like that in interviews as well. But
yeah, he had some pretty weird. I wouldn't say weird actually. He had a pretty opinionated concept of what it means to have a strong female character when the success of the first Wonder Woman.
Oh yeah, that's
right,
true.
right.
I remember that.
Yeah, there was that, and I think some of that has to do with a little bit of his arrogance. I don't think he realizes that, like, okay, like to some degree, small level of what he said, I agreed to some degree, like to some level, but overall, it's like I don't know, you can't really like your guy, like you can't. Can you actually say that like that's how how women should be depicted, anyways? But like I don't know, to some level, it's like you can't have you can't just own that genre just because you had or own that type of
what did he
portrayal.
say? I don't even remember.
He basically said that that Wonder Woman's depiction wasn't strong female protagonist.
She didn't look like a guy.
Because no, it's because in his perception, because he related it definitely to Terminator, that she never struggled to get anything that she had. She was just is the way that she is. And I was like, okay, I get it as a character, but I don't think it has nothing to do with her being a woman or not.
Right.
And in his thinking was that it's strictly to the fact that the movie was trying to portray a female protagonist, and his perception, he did the best in Terminator, especially in Terminator 2. And I'm like, okay, I give it that really is a good depiction of like a female character struggling to be the mother, but also be the hero at the same time. And I get it. At the same time, I was like, I don't think it's necessarily because she was female character in Wonder Woman that made it lacking or not hitting the mark. It was just the character itself, in my opinion, didn't show that specific struggle. Where's the struggle in the line of that character being taken, maybe not taken seriously, or what it's like to be in their perspective, where maybe you're in the shadow, but it was never it wasn't felt like Wonder Woman when the movie was specifically trying to say that. It was just a character, you could put it in any other gender and I don't think it would have said anything really different about what being a woman is. I think it just, to general public, is just just raving that the fact that it's a popular female, happens to be female, hero character, and it happens to be the only other DC that has a decent enough entertaining story. It's just, people are just relating these, things that if you really took those away, it really didn't change anything. In my opinion, and that was just definitely my opinion. And I'm just bringing it up because he had he just was toting about I did a better one. Fuck her.
Right.
And he just
protects the throne.
Yeah. It was he had really had that opinion. And he's okay, I guess I see what you mean, but at the same time, yeah. I don't think the conversation was ever needed to be there in the first place. And I think maybe he's just salty on the fact that there was just that kind of people are relating it that way. That I could understand, because I didn't feel like it really said anything really about too much about a woman's role, I guess, or was gender in the conversation. Yeah, I think people just impose that because the visual and the character happens to be female.
Yeah. And I mean,
Right.
I don't
there's
know.
also the case that Linda Hamilton in that movie, it's just it's playing a supporting role rather than the you
Ah,
know,
yeah.
and they mean also the main character, right? Like that's the reason why Wonder Woman's uh character just it's highlighted in today's media. It's the fact that she's
Right.
the
She's
main
like the main,
protagonist in her.
yeah, and Linda Hamilton isn't necessarily the main character, I guess. I mean,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
that's a funny thing too.
I mean, it's
He
why
said
it's like comparing apples to oranges to me.
right. He that's a funny thing too for him, like maybe that wasn't portrayed well because to him he was saying that was the main character. It wasn't the Terminator was not. It wasn't about the Terminator and it wasn't about John Connor. Like the way he like his intention was that it was her character, like that she was the main
Right.
character from start to finish.
Yeah,
So
we get that narration from her, so it's obviously from her point of view.
right.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, like that's what he was saying. To your point about was she the main character or not?
Right.
For him, it was.
That's funny because I think that growing up and even nowadays, I can see how that can be that's interpretation in a literary sense. When you watch the movie, the emphasis is always on both John Connor and the Terminator,
Right.
which is
Yeah.
why she feels more like a supporting role rather than a
Yeah. She's just kind of. It's the problem here is she's the basket, not the stork.
Yeah.
Kind of
Yeah.
thing. Like she's just the vehicle for the whole plot. Like, and then
for the narrative to exist. Exactly.
right, yeah. And then I think the only time I can say that she really had a character development that wasn't just to survive was Terminator 2 for me, which is
Yeah.
my favorite one is that one just because like we understood what she had to struggle to go through and then what she was like struggling to hold a secret or even not even hold it as a secret, more like how can she convince anybody? Now she's like imprisoned and having to survive in that situation where only she knows the truth and no one else can, she can't prove it. And I think that Terminator 2 was for me like that she was like the character that had like the most growth versus say.
Well, that's why I think that she is the main character of Terminator 2. Like I've
Right.
always seen it the opposite of what you were saying, Carlos, where you thought John Connor. Were you saying John Connor was the main character?
Yeah. I always
Well, the
felt
reason
like
the reason why I always thought it was Sarah Connor is because she's actually the only one who has growth. Like in the movie, John Connor is like he doesn't actually have any emotional growth in the movie. Like he's just like okay, he starts off as this kid who's like seemingly abandoned by his mom, and then like they go through the whole thing, and he's stealing shit, and like at the end, he's still the same kid. Like he knows that he has a role like to play in the future, but it's always about Sarah Connor and the Terminator protecting him. Like that's always what it's about. It's always about like if they die, then he's totally fucked. So it's all really like the Terminator doesn't have any emotion, so it's like not
Right.
really he doesn't really care. It's just his mission. But for Sarah Connor, like it's all the emotions are on her. Like everything is on her shoulders. So it's not only that she's like narrating the story, but all the emotions are being filtered through her. So like that, and it's not really through John Connor, like not just from the writing or the story perspective, but also unfortunately from the acting perspective, because Edward Furlong is a terrible actor and it doesn't shine through at all with like his emotions, like the very few emotions that he's actually supposed to be portraying in the movie. So
Right.
yeah, I've always seen it as Sarah Connor is the main character in both Terminator and obviously Terminator, but Terminator 2 as well.
Right. Right. That's
Like
interesting.
she's the one who's like, been written off as insane. And she's the one who has basically the biggest and I feel like most important arc in the movie, like bar none.
Especially
Where
the
she's
part
like,
where she like is convinced to kill Dyson, but then like at the last moment
Right.
doesn't. You know, it's like this realization, like, you know, like what am I doing here? You know, like
Yeah.
is it the mission that was more important here? You know, and then discovering the new way. You know, it's interesting also because between Terminator 1 and 2, she was definitely the damsel in distress to some
Yeah.
degree, right? And then like it's a huge, just like huge change from that to
Yeah.
this, and we get little bits and pieces of like, oh, she, you know, went to, what was it, South America or something, and then like learned how to use guns and like
Yeah, and she was
guerrilla
like,
tactics and
she
shit
would
like
like
that.
intentionally date guys who were like Green Berets and stuff, so that they would teach her stuff, and
Right.
then she would like dump them and like go to the next one just for the training, and then she would pass that on to John Connor.
Yeah, it's like weird little like tidbits that gave her like, wow, there's all these things that are happening. It's just too bad, you know, you don't get to explore any more of that. I mean, obviously there's the TV show that came out,
Which is awesome, and it really did explore her character a
Right.
lot more, and John Connor's character like way more than they did in Terminator 2.
Yeah, and this is before before Game of Thrones too. What's
Yeah,
the
a few
actress's
years.
name?
Lena Headey.
Yeah, she played.
Yeah, I love
Lena
that
Headey,
actress.
isn't it?
She is
She played
awesome.
She plays Sarah. Yeah.
Cersei.
Sarah. Oh, that's
Cersei
cool.
in Game of Thrones, and yeah, Sarah Connor.
You know who
Yeah.
has you know who also has character growth in Terminator 2? The Terminator. I mean, ironically
Yeah,
enough,
makes
he
sense.
does, especially at the very end. He's like, you know, I understand why you humans cry, but it's not
Yeah.
something I can do. And in the
Right.
end,
Right.
you know, I need you guys to destroy me for the sake of mankind.
Right. Right.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. They definitely like added some of those like elements of like he understood. It's like you can understand it, but not experience it, type of thing.
Yeah.
So he understood that, like, okay, I get it. Like, I get the connection.
Like, I get the emotions even if I can't feel them. Like, I
Right.
understand why this is important to you and why these relationships are important to you and why I have to sacrifice myself.
To
Yeah.
think that they could have just, you know, put the other arm on him, he would have become a, you know, an interior designer. Dark Fate. That was, it genuinely made me funny when when in
Yeah.
Dark Fate he's talking about, you know, how interior designing is so complicated. And he's like so into it.
I mean, like, I think we talked a little bit about that movie before, but like that movie, just talking about it, especially from like the Sarah Connor perspective, like that's such a wasted opportunity. Like
Oh,
to
yeah.
bring her back, like as this, like, okay, she's the one who survives, not John Connor. Here's the twist, and then you bring her back, and she's old, and she's been like, she still has her mission and everything, and we don't really get any real character development from her, like
Yeah.
that goes further than what we already got in Terminator 2, and it's
You only
such
get
a fucking
some
shame.
small background stuff too.
Yeah,
Whereas
it's-
like this,
yeah.
remember that guy near the end where he's like, "How do you fucking know him? Like, who is he? Like, I
Right,
don't even understand.
right.
Like, how he knows you? Like, what?
Oh, you mean you're talking about the
The military?
black like general?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
You know I thought that was gonna be Dyson's son. Like that's
You
who I
know,
thought
that's what
that
I
was
was
gonna be.
leaning on too. It's just, I don't know.
But he was no one.
Yeah,
I
he was
like, oh,
pretty much no
okay.
one. Yeah. It's too bad.
Yeah.
That would have been like a fine little Easter egg. I would have been fine with that. Like,
Yeah,
fuck it.
especially because like we would have understood like his conflict as a character
Yeah,
as like,
yeah.
oh, she tried to kill my family like when I was
Right.
a kid, but now I understand her mission and like I
like
get
my
it.
father
Like,
sacrificed himself for it too.
Right.
You know, so it's like this bigger.
again,
arc.
wasted opportunities. Wasted.
Yeah, it's just
Too
too bad. Too bad. Terminator is just cursed. I feel like.
I mean, yeah,
They just
no,
need to stop.
Not
Like,
none
Yeah,
of those
they just
movies.
need to stop. Yeah.
None of the movies after Terminator 2 should exist. Maybe.
Yeah,
I mean,
I agree.
except for Salvation. Maybe, but
I
only
mean,
in
I
theory.
like Salvation. I
Yeah.
like Salvation. But
Yeah.
it doesn't need to be there. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
I don't think
Yeah,
we
yeah,
ever need to see. We never really need to see anything past Terminator 2. Like
Yeah.
as interesting as like I guess the war could have been with like the Terminators and stuff. Like
Mhm.
it's never been about that. It's never been about the war itself. It's been about you know stopping Judgment Day, but like, or trying to prevent it for as long as possible, because it really is just inevitable as long as humans exist.
Right. Which is just like, yeah, it's funny. Remember, speaking of salvation, and that links to our conversation about like genius assholes, I guess. Remember that whole fiasco from that Christian Bale yelling at one of the crewmates on there. Yeah, and then everybody just hops on.
I feel like that
whole...
was just him about having a bad day.
Yeah,
like I feel like that was
I don't
just
think
him
it was
a bad day
him normal, right? You know?
Yeah, we've never heard anything like that, like about him again.
Yeah,
and he did really like apologize for that, and he felt really bad. And like on every other set he's ever been on, people were like, "Yeah, he's a nice guy." Like I felt like he just like it was like, okay, he's an actor, so he's in the spotlight, and he had a bad day, and
right.
It fucking happens.
Exactly.
Like it doesn't excuse like him yelling at the dude, but like it's like, you know, like he tried to make it okay afterwards. And I think
he did it. It did it long before. He said it. You know how like people apologize when it blows up? He already apologized prior to it blowing up.
By the time it had come out, he had already apologized.
And it's just, you know, everybody's just reacting real quickly to the situation, and you know, and was it more recently too? In like, what was it, 2020? We heard the whole Tom Cruise thing. And, you know, there's like the concept
that one was more divisive.
Yeah, that was definitely divisive.
Understood why
like,
he
I
was
understood
yelling.
Understood
it
why
is
he was
fair
yelling.
Because he's trying to be safe, and he really, like with Mission Impossible 7, they are really setting the standard of like the first movie to come to like be really like out the gate again, as COVID is still in full force and still in like they're still in full they're like in full cylinder production. But it's like, you know, like I get like he shouldn't have yelled at them. I totally get that. And was he being an asshole? Absolutely. But like he also has a point. Yeah, exactly. It's like I understand you guys are just doing this for this one moment, but like this one moment could spread and literally like infect everybody. Like we hear about it every day. Like,
and it's not just the infection that just, you know, really important right there. It's also the meta you know, situation happening around them, that they are also setting the standard for exactly that production can happen so long as you know, people follow protocol. And if not, then the whole entire movie industry it's gonna have another crash.
Yeah, and you know, this, you know, maybe you know, like maybe something good comes from this kind of like people going public, where it's like maybe he'll just maybe I'm not gonna fucking yell at people.
Like I heard something about that, where like they hired robots to like
everybody gets like their own robot.
I don't know the specifics, but it was something like that.
Look, we can just have, you know, CG deep fakes. We can just have all CG deep fakes, like a la Luke Skywalker.
If I remember correctly, it was the issue was that the two people were looking at the same screen, and they were like literally face to face.
Right, they were too close to each other.
Yeah.
Without masks.
Right. I think that's the thing where it's like for him, maybe personally, he's like, okay, fine, I'm not gonna yell next time. I'm just gonna go. Like, let's talk personally. Like let's step this aside and we'll talk about it. And you know, that's, you know, has its own merits and stuff to say it, that you know, maybe that like just will temper the way that he reacts. Because you know, like, you got to think of it this way too, because there could be a whole nother side to it, where it's just the people that unknowingly did that without thinking, right? Like, they're just doing things and they don't have it in the forefront of their mind. But when you react in such a harsh way, that maybe they just take it the completely opposite direction that you meant it to. Instead of taking COVID seriously, they just go full nuclear and just like deny. You know what? I think this is bullshit anyway. You know, like this whole you know, COVID thing is bullshit anyways. You know, you end up pushing somebody that could be your ally further from the potential truth of it. And, you know, hey, you know, there's sometimes where, like, maybe he was kind of like, I don't know who they were, but maybe they were somebody that had a higher position. Like, they were not leading by example. You know what I'm saying? Like
Mhm.
maybe that's probably what really also fueled him too. Cause like, come on, man, you should know better. Cause you're like
Sure.
we're like the leaders right now, right? Like if
Yeah.
you do that, what do you think that everybody else is gonna do? So you know, this is complicated. Hopefully, hopefully better things coming from it. But yeah. What else is there in terms of asshole geniuses?
Albert Einstein. Actually, he was also famously really hard to work with, and
Huh.
I think he was divorced. He was never really close to his daughter. And
Oh,
of
wow.
course, the genius that he originally, got recognition for. He has both theories of special relativity and general relativity. Special relativity being the whole E equals mc squared, and general relativity being the whole, space. Seeing gravity as a space-time continuum rather than the force from Newton. He was, also he later on he just also was pretty wrong in some things like the one theory that you guys that the entirety of like Ant-Man and the MCU depends on quantum theory.
Mm.
Like he denied it all the way onto his deathbed.
Hmm.
Oh,
That
okay.
he famously said this quote that is I guess misquoted all the time, where he said, God does not play dice, which is a way of saying like the universe doesn't play, it's not probabilistic. It doesn't isn't
Hmm.
for him like every single thing has to have a cause and effect that has to be
Right.
exactly that we have to see every single part of the mechanism.
Right.
Mm, I see.
Yeah.
Or is it just not yet explained yet? I mean, you know,
Yeah,
there,
there's also that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think like one thing I remember learning that builds kind of respect for maybe the individual, maybe not the whole group as you know people would take at face value. Scientists like they'll have a theory, but they're open. They should be, and that's not always the case, open to being wrong, and which is why they
Yeah.
consistently hypothesize but they always test it. Like regardless if we know it to be true that the math checks out, they will always fundamentally check that math first again
Oh
and
yeah.
always come back to it to say, is there a way to disprove it? And
Right.
the
Yeah.
thing about just, I think society in general, and it depends on individuals too, but just groups of people that will like, just will not let go of like, this is the mathematical truth that I know it, and no one can say otherwise, even though when somebody brings to something that kind of shocks the scientific community,
Hmm.
there's going to be people that are going to be against it, right? Because maybe there's a maybe there's a reason why they want to not have that be true. Maybe there's a benefit that they have, and that's really difficult to really come down to when you come down to like a moral choice that they're doing for, or is it just the utter truth that you're trying to go for?
Yeah.
It's
Sure.
difficult.
Wait, are we talking about ethics in science, or are we
Yeah,
talking
ethics and
about?
science. Yeah, it's like really hard for like on paper they're not supposed to like ethically they're not supposed to like just uh purposely
Supposed
trying
to
to
be
stop.
objective.
Yeah, they're
Right.
supposed to be objective. Like you're not supposed to stop somebody trying to disprove it. You can only just like let it be tested. But
Oh,
when it's just like
and we're not talking about ethics. We're talking about scientific method in general. Where
well,
it's
yeah,
just like,
yeah, but
Exactly.
then the
well, the
ethics
funny thing
of
is that it's
of
really not belief. It's just anything can be disproven tomorrow. So
exactly.
a
Yeah.
lot of scientists on TV might act that way, but generally, scientific method is always going to be challenged. Like I remember, and I keep bringing this up, but the laws of pressure were changed just as we were about to take that lesson in high school. So we had to skip that lesson.
Mm,
It's not as though we could have just went over it just because, like, this is what we know now that's in our textbook. No, it
right.
got out of
Right.
date.
Right.
And
And
like it's always going to be changing. Like I don't
yeah.
really think that scientists are going to be taking emotional investment in things going to be changing because I read articles almost every month or so, and there's always going to be one new rule changing or one new
Yeah.
thing changing,
Right.
and it's like, okay,
And it should
this
be
is fine,
fine
and it's
to do
usually going to be
so.
peer
Yeah.
reviewed.
But the thing is like there's definitely some doubt in you know just based on like how history has like had scientists trying to you know hey this like let's try this like this is something
Yeah.
new, it's gonna disprove what we thought before, and
Sure.
there's always like this like a weird amount of like group resistance to it,
Right.
and you
Sure.
just
Well,
have to
what's an
break that
example?
barrier. An
What's
example of
one
that
example?
An example of that would be, I would say, when.
Well, here's one
You mean
one
like
thought.
inside the scientific community or
Yeah,
outside?
inside it, because there's in most history always has a situation where when somebody has uh
There's like a
a,
dogma that people have followed
Sure.
for a
Yeah.
long time, and it's
yeah,
kind of hard to have that kind of paradigm shift of like changing to a completely different way of doing things. For example,
right, and then you
um,
know they would have and they would have the debate consistently, and there's just there's sometimes groups that were just like like no that doesn't make sense because
yeah,
XYZ, but they can't
Yeah,
necessarily
but
prove
like,
it right
what's
there.
something that I can look up that
yeah.
follows
Well,
that?
most of Stephen Hawking's career when he was in was it
Oxford.
yeah he was trying to his was it in Cambridge, I think it was Cambridge. No, I think yeah, it was in Oxford. Mm, Where he was his
University of Cambridge, right?
okay, Cambridge. Okay,
Yeah,
so
you're right.
like he had a theory of how the universe was made, and it went against like how everybody had originally thought of it, and then because also it was challenging not only how scientists saw it but also how religious
Sure.
groups saw it. It was there was this two pronged thing where he had to fight to for people to like consider it, and like how um yeah, essentially.
Right.
um
Um,
I
so,
can't remember it specifically. Holy crap, I'm like trying to look it up, but
like, well, I can only think of like black holes. Like, there's you guys have probably have heard of the famous Hawking radiation, which is basically the black holes eventually, very eventually, like exponentially more than further away into the future than you can possibly imagine. Eventually, like evaporate and dissipate the into nothingness. Um, in a way, it actually goes against a lot of things that we take that we take for granted in order that we have to explore in science. Let me put it. Let me give you some context. In you know, in in science, there's you guys have heard of like conservation of energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well,
mhm.
this there is the exact same principle for information. We think that all information is always conserved. Like technically anything and everything that exists, you can trace back, the previous causes, that caused it. If you break a teapot, or if you break a teacup, in theory, you could, put all the species together and, and see that, that it used to be a teacup.
Right.
Um, when it comes to black holes, it is the only thing in the universe that, if Hawking radiation is right, and we pretty much, think that it's right at this point, um, it is the one thing that erases information.
Huh.
Because not only can you not retrieve anything from the inside, the energy that comes out of Hawking radiation, it's not energy. It's not the energy. It's not the has nothing to do with the stuff inside of it. It's to put it in simple terms, particles that virtual particles that sort of become real, and steal away the energy from the they steal away the energy from the from the inside of the black hole. Like if you
Yeah.
had a if you have a thermos, you know, none of the particles from the thermos are escaping when it cools down. It's just the
Right.
air around it that's it's stealing its heat its heat out of it. So in the case of the black holes, if all of it, if all of that energy is expelled out, and eventually it just puffs uh, the black hole out of existence. Well, what happened to all that stuff that was inside of it?
Interesting.
So it
Yeah.
creates like what it's known as the information paradox.
So in his career, from 1966 to 1975, there was, it was actually that. It had to do with his the theory of it was the Hawking radiation. So initially it was the Hawking radiation was controversial, but by the late 1970s, following the publication of the further research, the discovery was widely accepted as significant breakthrough in theoretical science. So
basically, it threatened the law of conservation, going like, "Hey, here's an example of energy being destroyed."
And it was kind of
Well,
one of those things like where, for whatever reason, some people were like, "Oh, this guy's too new to this," or like he had like a history up until that point with his theory. Up until that theory is that like he was just really fucking good with his math, and he was like impermeable, right? Like no,
Right.
and he's new and he's young, and like it wasn't. There was this kind of like air of like, oh, you're just a kid. Like you're just new at this. Like,
oh,
like there's that thing where like they felt threatened by him, and there was just small things that had nothing to do with just the science. It's just was the community didn't want to accept him as
Right.
part of like
Right.
to get his seniorship, and it
Well,
took.
I mean, while there are reasons for having the debate and going against his ideas are stupid, like him just being a kid or
Right.
whatever, or even while the reasons are dumb, I think it is necessary for that to happen. Like
Right.
it's necessary
question,
to have
right.
to question everything.
Yeah.
To have a healthy debate until you eventually do come up with a new scientific theory that has been tested again and again and again. Like that has to happen.
Right.
So,
Yeah, it's the case that like the best science always happens at those margins where like it doesn't seem like there's going to be any more progress, but at some point somebody finds something that doesn't really quite add up.
right.
Like I think that there was a quote that I can't remember who said, but the most scientific achievements have never been preceded by the phrase "Eureka," but it's always been, "Oh, that's funny."
Right. I've heard that. Yeah.
Yeah, because they're so
Yeah, and
like
it's true. I mean, that's what scientists are explorers, right? Like that's the whole point is that it's like the best scientists have to know when to say like I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how that
Right.
happens. Let me go see and try to figure out how that works.
Right. Let me test it. Yeah.
Right. If you ever meet a scientist who's like, this is how it works and this is how it will always work, and I know everything there is to know about this, it's not true. Like
Right.
it's just like there's always more to discover.
Yeah, again, quoting Albert Einstein, like he was one of the first people who said we'll never be able to split the atom.
There you go.
Famously wrong.
Science fiction today is science fact tomorrow, right? Like
Yeah.
True.
it happens.
Actually, one of the other ones is one interesting case of like for Albert Einstein was when he was actually wrong, but he made a mistake, but he was right in the mistake. And that was when it was like I think it was the 30s or the 40s where we discovered with our telescopes that all galaxies were flying away from just before that event happened, that we discovered that all galaxies are expanding away from us. The general consensus in all of science was that the universe was ecstatic. Like it just
Right.
it didn't expand, it didn't go anywhere. It was just it's just been there. It's always there. It's always been there, and it's never been changing, right? So now the problem here is that if gravity affects every single object in the universe, and that's the way that we understand gravity, that even the smallest atom over here is pulling all the atoms in the Andromeda galaxy right now.
Right.
And the thing is that if you think about it, that means that if everything is eventually if everything is contracting each other, eventually it should crash down into becoming a giant black hole, or small, a singularity all over, right? So, in order to counteract, gravity, Albert Einstein created this kind of like, admittedly, he said that it was bullshit term known as the cosmological constant. Basically, just a term that he put in the math in order to pretty much stabilize the universe and say, hey, see, it's not contracting, it's just ecstatic, it's just right there. And eventually, when we find out that all the galaxies are expanding away from us, we could still use that math, that exact constant, but if we just put it at different values, we pretty much had the exact same values at which the galaxies are flying away from each other.
Right.
Yeah. So he said, "Oh, yep, that was my biggest blunder."
Funny.
But at least he admitted it was a mistake. Whereas,
Yeah.
like, yo, that was the plan all along.
I know, right?
I'm right.
To be fair, I would have definitely said, like, "Yep, I was just testing you guys."
I think Stephen Hawking also had like family issues too, with his like. But I don't know if he was like an asshole necessarily.
Yeah.
But I think it was just, with his what's the it's not a disease. It's like
Lou Gehrig's disease.
yeah. Is it disease? Okay.
It's called
Yeah.
Lou Gehrig's. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
After the
Where after
the baseball player.
he lost all his mobility pretty much.
Mm-hmm. It's known as amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS.
ALS.
Yeah.
Phil.
Well, at least he wasn't. Well, at least he wasn't going around eating people.
Wait, what?
I'm just trying to
That's
make
your
a
segue into Hannibal.
Yes, that is my very subtle segue to Hannibal.
Well, just in
That we
time,
know.
we're making a new podcast out of that. All right, bye guys.
All right.
This is the end of this podcast. It's an hour and 40 minutes in.
Thanks for listening.
We end on
we end on a
Next
Stephen
time on podcast.
Stephen Hawking and other a dude
Stephen Hawking,
eating
and
other
then
people.
suddenly cannibals.
Stephen Hawking didn't eat
Cannibalism.
anybody.
Are
that
you
we
into
know of.
it? We'll find out.
I mean, it's different from person to person.
Okay, 3, 2, 1. I'm ending it.